This is the Bad Batch podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about the Bad Batch 206 Tribe.
I'm Omega. What's your name?
My Wookiee's a little rusty, but I think he says his name is Gungi. You catch that?
He's been on the run since Order 66, and was attempting to reach the Wookiee homeworld of Kashyyyk before he was captured by those smuggling droids.
I'm not sure how you survived this long on your own, but it's impressive.
If he's trying to get to his homeworld, we can take him.
Been a while since we've been to Kashyyyk.
Welcome back, fellow Batchers, to TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about the 6th episode of Season 2 of the Bad Batch Tribe. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Batchers. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And hello to all you baddies out there. I am Chris.
Welcome back, guys.
Yeah. It's another episode. It's another week.
Yeah, we're about a third of the way through the Bad Batch Season 2.
Yeah, it has some ups, it has some downs, it has some in-betweens.
Yeah.
It is pretty much a standard show.
Yes, we're back with the adventures of the Bad Batch again this week. Another kind of standalone adventure that we see this time.
Yes, absolutely. But I think what's great about this particular episode is the insertion of former clone troopers in the Bad Batch, sort of with the Wookiees and on Kashyyyk. So I really kind of enjoyed that, because to me, Kashyyyk and the Wookiees, they are, they're the persecuted, absolutely persecuted species in this galaxy by the Empire. That genocidal type sort of focus on the Wookiees by the Empire, and this is kind of the start of that. So it's I kind of like that insertion of clone troopers, which the Wookiees must have a huge amount of distrust for, given their turn on the Jedi with Order 66. So that was quite a nice little part of this episode.
Absolutely. And as you say, they're consistent kind of stripping of Kashyyyk for all of its resources as well. So they don't have a lot of love for the Empire at all. Yeah.
No. For me, we're getting like a lot of we're 3 adventures of the weeks and 3 storylines, kind of more important ones. And I that for me is at the moment, I'm hoping the balance shifts a bit further into storyline based ones. I know we do have a double hitter coming up next week. So very soon. So I'm hoping that shifts the balance, but it's fun. They're at least this episode does kind of expand the lore for some of you kind of deep Clone Wars Rebel type guys, as well as kind of just anyone really into Star Wars lore. But it does also just feel very standalone, which is, maybe I'm getting too much into it, but we can talk more about it later.
Yeah. Although it did get me on a trajectory of watching the young Jedi arc from season 5, I think, of the Clone Wars, that has Gungi, the Wookiee Jedi, in there, training, finding their crystals to construct their lightsaber, and actually just that 3-story arc of episodes was really, really good. Really enjoyed it. And
I was going to actually say, Chris, I know you've been looking for kyber crystals throughout our coverage of the Bad Batch. Go back and watch season 5, episode 6 of the Clone Wars, and it is all about younglings going to collect their kyber crystals and create their lightsabers. It's a story that you would particularly really enjoy.
Okay.
And the thing is, after watching those 3, I kind of then watched the next 3 and the following 3. So I suddenly went down a massive rabbit hole of watching tons of Clone Wars. And actually, maybe, you know, to your point about mission of the week and so on, even if in between some of these bigger points, that we, get in the Bad Batch, even just having it as a 3-story arc in between would be really useful, I think, for the Bad Batch, just to link some of these missions together. I guess that is Sid, but then at the same time, we've probably just not had enough of Sid for that gelling. You know, if you think of the, of episode 4, and the big, don't trust her, you know, she will throw you under the bus type thing. Even if it was just that kind of, doubting of Sid or throwing that doubt onto her within the you know, an arc of 3, on these missions, would be a really useful structure, because at the moment, I'm kind of with you, Chris. I kind of want to see the balance shift a bit more to, I guess what we got with, the 3rd episode with the solitary clone, where that feels connected, to the previous season. But nonetheless, I like that it connects in with Clone Wars with Gungi, having Gungi back here, as well. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I probably agree with you guys. I know that this show will always have its standalone comedy episodes, the ones that are for the kids, and I totally get that. But having gone back and watched those episodes of Clone Wars with you, John, it was really interesting to see that it was, for the most part in those last couple of seasons, it was 3-episode arcs, whereas here we start off with the mid-mission, and then the mission takes a turn. In the Clone Wars, you would have had that first part of the episode would be an episode on its own leading into this twist, and then it would have a third part to wrap it up. So you would stretch this story across 3 episodes rather than just jumping into the middle of an adventure, effectively. But we will talk, obviously, about the episode in full spoiler-filled detail as we continue to go on. Make sure you have subscribed to the podcast. You can subscribe over on TV Podcast Industries, or just searching for TV Podcast Industries on any Empire-supporting or Revolutionary Rebellion-supporting podcast player of your choice. We also want to hear your thoughts on the show. Please email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your thoughts on any episode of any show that we're covering. You can also pop over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, where there's a spoiler post for every episode of every show that we're covering as well. Let's get into the episode details for this show, though.
Derek, what are the episode details?
Well, executive producers for the show are Dave Filoni and Jennifer Corbett. This episode, once again, written by Matt Miknovitz, who is the story editor for the series so far and has written loads of episodes of the series as well. This episode was directed by Stuart Lee, and this is his 3rd episode of the season.
Very good.
Yeah. And John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 6, Tribe?
Sure. While delivering forged chain codes to the smuggling ship Vanguard Axis, Omega encounters Gungi, a young Wookiee and former Jedi Padawan. He is being tortured by the droid of the ship as they are transporting him for sale. Sacrificing their mission, the Bad Batch free Gungi and bring him back to his home planet of Kashyyyk. The Wookiee is distrustful of the former Republic commandos following Order 66. When they arrive at Kashyyyk, they discover that Imperials have invaded the planet and are using a group of Trandoshans to enslave the population and strip the planet of minerals to support their war effort. The Bad Batch make a stand with a tribe of Wookiees and defeat the Trandoshans and Imperials. The Wookiees' leader, Yan, provides a home for Gungi, as he doesn't remember anything about where he might have been from on Kashyyyk. And I hasten to add as well, that it is, yes, Trandoshans, not Kardashians.
No, it's
I
not.
kept thinking this is the Kardashian race.
No, that's from Star Trek, John.
Exactly.
They were a very big race there. Interestingly, if you guys didn't know, Sid is also a Trandoshan.
Yes, yeah.
I thought that was quite interesting in this episode, because the Trandoshans are known as being quite villainous creatures. We've known them from Bosk, who was a bounty hunter in Empire Strikes Back, kind of a lizard-looking creature, and now the Trandoshans here working very closely with the Imperials. But Sid is also Trandoshan. A much kinder and nicer Trandoshan.
Seemingly so, yes.
She's quite harsh to our Bad Batch.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. But let's get into our blaster points for this episode. We've already talked a lot about this already, but our first blaster point for the episode is welcome back, Gungi. Seeing Gungi here again, this force sensitive Wookiee who people saw in the trailer. If you didn't watch Clone Wars, we did see Gungi in the trailer, so kind of cool seeing him here. carrying his lightsaber, his green lightsaber that we saw him create back in the Clone Wars. That was quite cool. A little touch there.
A mahogany infused lightsaber, no less. Yes, it's kind of got a wood effect, in keeping with that kind of the Wookiees and their more sort of natural sort of sensitivity. A bit like the Navi in Avatar.
Oh, look at you. Look at you connecting more other extra worlds outside of Star Wars. But I do like this here. I like what it's saying outside what it's saying in the episode. Again, you know, Chris, we've mentioned before, hasn't watched the Clone Wars, so this is a new character to him, having Gungi, the Wookiee Jedi here. But one of the things I do like about this idea of bringing him in is the last time we saw him, he was with a very tight group of younglings. There's 5 of them that were all brought together as a group by Ahsoka to start their Jedi path and building their lightsabers. Here we find Gungi captured by the smugglers on this ship, the Vanguard Axis, is going to be sold on as a Wookiee. Generally, they are well wanted in the slave trade, as we'd mentioned before. They tend to get captured and brought into the slave trade. So he is very wanted for that, but also being a force-sensitive Wookiee, that makes him even more valuable to the smugglers, I suppose, which I think is an interesting story. And the fact that he's been separated from the rest of the younglings as well is is an interesting back end to it. My one complaint about the episode actually is by choosing Gungi out of all of those younglings, most of whom you could have a conversation with and find out their backstories, having a Wookiee here and them not ever connecting the story to what happened to the rest of the younglings feels like a little bit of a waste. Seems like a misstep or a poor choice to me.
Did they all die in Order 66 or did they continue as this tight-knit group and survived and have, been on the run, sort of,
Work
again,
together,
even being part, disparate part of this growing rebellion against what's happened in the galaxy. And just having that context would be really good. I mean, even, we see here Gungi is only vaguely remembers his homeworld of Kashyyyk and through his dreams, that it could also link in with, dreams of his fellow Jedi Padawans from back in the day.
Yeah.
So,
and that of course is a reference to the fact that he doesn't remember Kashyyyk is a reference to the old version of the Jedi. They would have been taken at birth if they're found to be force sensitive, taken away from their family, and their new family becomes the Jedi that they're surrounded with, the younglings that they train with, similar to what we see from stormtroopers in the future, that they're taken from their families and brought to the Empire. So, so that's a reference to the fact that he doesn't remember Kashyyyk because he would have been taken as a child from his whole community. So, I like all of that stuff when you can kind of layer it on top of it. So, but I do feel it's a little bit of a mistake to not have that conversation with our main cast here, the Bad Batch, to explain. All that
that's
to the audience,
true.
I suppose.
I mean, the one thing I did like in terms of this whole Gungi arc was, that his suspicion of Bad Batch Unit 99, given their clone troopers, given what he's seen, the killing of Jedis, I assume, under Order 66. So that whole thing, and linking to the Bad Batch, realizing, they are different from the other clones, and certainly from what's been born out of the New Republic with the Empire and the Stormtroopers, that they don't believe in this mission that of the new Empire, the new Galactic Empire. So I like that sort of element to this story as well.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm coming in as the newbie. So I have not seen Gungi before. The initial awe moment for me was, it's another Wookiee. The universe is huge in the Star Wars universe. So the downside for me is that it is a known planet. It is a known quantity in Kashyyyk, in a Wookiee, in kind of a Wookiee being a Jedi, because I've seen that before.
Oh, okay.
So I was kind of hoping, could you not give me one of the other hundreds of alien races where we have not really got, because that's how we get to know more about the universe of the Star Wars universe, because the Trandoshans started off as a background character in Return of the Jedi on Jabba the Hutt's barge and in his castle as a bounty hunter. Like, that's all they were. And then we got introduced more and more and more, and we learned more about so for me, I was kind of hoping for more, them to test the water in a bit more. Kind of give me a bit more lore about the universe, give me a bit more X, Y, Z, give me an unknown race of a Jedi, kind of a training. Because we saw, like, there was a little squid baby kid in the prequels as well, as a youngling. So I was like, what, Gungi is cool, though, like, in what he is. And that reveal, if you have not seen the Clone Wars, where he's reaching into the crate and pulls out his lightsaber, is pretty spectacular if you've not seen that, because you're like, oh, cool, a Jedi. I'm happy now. I get lightsaber blasties. It's that. So there is that kind of give and take. In where you do give the known quantity for some, but also then potentially you could have done this other thing, but you decided to do this because it does grant you a known quantity, as well as it leads you to the ability to go to Kashyyyk to start to show this more deeper issue of slave trade, of strip mining, of XYZ.
Yeah. I like the idea that they brought back this Wookiee Jedi. They're not something that you see very often, and if you're seeing it for the first time, I'm glad you had that reaction, Chris. You're seeing it for the first time. You're seeing this guy, this character, and you're going, oh wow, and he's also a Jedi Wookiee. That's cool. They're pretty powerful anyway, without any kind of weapons. So can you imagine if they're force sensitive? That's kind of a good reaction to have, to having the character for the first time. And I know when I was watching it, I was going, oh, is this Gungi? Is this the character that we saw back in the Clone Wars? Because it's not that long ago. It was only in season 5. It was towards the end of the run of Clone Wars. So it's kind of good to revisit that character as well. So, but as I say, I think the misstep is not connecting that for the audience, not connecting that for what's happened since, I suppose, that story of the period since. Because again, having any youngling, any former Jedi youngling who's been captured and is about to be traded on the slave trade by these smugglers is a pretty horrible thought in the dark times after Revenge of the Sith. It's a pretty horrible thing that's happened to this character. And again, I think that moment where he's really fearful of the people that saved him because of what happened to him in the past is a really good moment to have, but it's kind of explained through Omega, and they eventually settle in with him, and he eventually does trust the Bad Batch and sees they're different. I do like that side of the story, though.
Yeah, definitely.
But one other thing about the kind of introduction to Gungi, again, an almost unspoken piece, because it's in dialogue, but you're not given much explanation behind it. The idea that the Bad Batch are trading in chain codes is quite interesting. We saw chain codes being introduced last season. It's almost like the passports for the Empire. You have to have a passport. They have to have a way to track you, or else you're not able to live within the Empire. So they're now in the black market for these. They're now creating them and selling them on the black market for people that need to have a chain code, but aren't getting the official ones from the Empire, basically. So this is something that in the background the rebels would need to be able to traverse the Empire. So that's an interesting story in itself that's going on in the background, but only dealt with in the opening moments of the episode. But I do like that that's the kind of stuff they're dealing in. That's stuff that you can jump off from and make a wider story out of.
Yeah, no, for me, and I'm hoping they do, because we've seen more and more on chain codes in ships where it's basically the Empire chain codes, and I'm going now into Andor territory, where we start getting into that, where there's falsified kind of, or old chain codes that haven't been used in months or years, blah, 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 where they changed the chain code every 2 weeks on these ships or these things because to stop what the Batch are doing. And it makes sense. In real life, you have people falsifying driver's licenses and passports. Like, gangs will do this. And we have to remember, Sid is a smuggler. Sid is dark, and the Batch are dealing with necessary evil in order to essentially kind of get by.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting where they go further on this, because they do abandon the mission to go to Kashyyyk.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, they do. Another failed mission for the Bad Batch. Again, they don't get any payment for this. Tech said he created the chain codes here as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
He said he's the one that falsified them. He's the one that created them. So of course they can go and create more and sell them on afterwards. But again, to your point, Chris, this is the 6th episode of the season and another failed mission for the Bad Batch. This is supposed to be giving them another big score. Chain codes, I'm sure, are very, very lucrative within the places that don't want to be part of the Empire, the underbelly of this galaxy. So it's probably something that they would have been expecting to get a big score from, and again, didn't pull off the mission.
Not only did they not get the DOSH, they also lost the codes in terms of getting out of their predicament that Omega puts them in by rescuing the Wookiee that's being sort of tasered and beaten up by the Vanguard Axis robots.
Yes.
So I do like the fact that, Echo effectively lets his guard down as Omega goes off on an exploration of this ship.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I mean, even I think on Omega in this season so far, she's kind of been in the background a little bit, even on this. What I mean is I think to Chris's point, that he's brought up around, is she force sensitive? Is she, she's the Omega to, Boba Fett's Alpha,
Or Beta.
Beta. That is...
Django would be the Alpha. Sorry, that's just gone into my head there. Yeah, Django would be the Alpha, Boba Fett the Beta, and she's the Omega, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That element, isn't coming through at the moment. And maybe it's not going to, but, it's just certainly, in terms of, Omega's role here.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like a traditional animation, you would have the young character being the one that wins every week. Like that's kind of, we talked about that before, that, even in the Formula One episode, the Riot Racing episode, it's not Omega that takes on the job to win. It's Tech. So I kind of like that in the show, that they're not making Omega the center of this. The Bad Batch as a whole, including Omega, are the center of
Yes. Okay.
which I kind of like. But I think you're still going into each episode expecting that that's what's going to happen. The plucky young upstart is going to become the center of it all. Because that's kind of what we got with Ahsoka in Clone Wars, right? That first movie of Clone Wars with Ahsoka, she was the most annoying character created in the Star Wars universe. And by season 3 of the Clone Wars, she was probably all of our favorite Jedi who watched the show. And then by the season 7, you're going, I can't wait for the spin-off of Ahsoka, because that character is amazing,
or Ezra in Rebels.
Ezra in Rebels.
Exactly.
Ezra started as... So that's why I do think there is an element of this, like Omega. And I think that's why they're not touching on it as much, because we've seen it before.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. They didn't set her up as an annoying character for the first 2 seasons. She's there with the Batch, and they're taking care of her as the uncles, dads that they are, effectively. But they're not allowing this character to be the annoying character, who's knows everything and wins every week.
Yeah.
She's a part of the Batch, and there's the reason they're trying to keep her safe, and work with her throughout the show, which I think is a much better choice when they, as you say, did that twice with 2 other shows before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I still think they're going to do it though, but let's move on.
They might. But when they do escape with Gungi, the mission kind of moves on to our blaster point 2, right? Because he's there because he was trying to escape from the Jedi Temple to get back to Kashyyyk. Or I don't know whether he actually says the Jedi Temple. He says that that's where he was trying to get to, is trying to get back to his home world of Kashyyyk, which is our blaster point 2. So yes, blaster point 2 is going back to Kashyyyk, again under attack, again being stripped of all of its minerals, and the people itself, the Wookiees, being captured. That seems to be where we are in the timeline. We say that this is something that we've seen a few times before, but they're all stories that took place within this time period, right? Because Yoda was on Kashyyyk when it was attacked by the Empire, which would have happened towards the end of Revenge of the Sith. This had taken place a few months or maybe a year after the end of Revenge of the Sith, right? I think that's roughly the timeline. So it seems like after Yoda and some of the Wookiees escaped, there is this sustained attack on some of the smaller villages or some of the smaller cities on the planet, effectively, with the Republic using the Trandoshans. Yeah.
Yeah, and in Fallen Order, we go to Kashyyyk, and there is a mine or a kind of slave mining operation. So we've seen that there.
Yeah, which is about, and Jedi Fallen Order is about another 5 or 6 years on from this period as well. Yeah.
So we're just seeing, this is the cool thing we keep talking about with the batch is up until Andor, this is as close as we've seen on the birth of the Empire. And like we've talked about how the currency was being built and changed, the chain codes, all this very nerdy stuff, that lore stuff that we're always kind of asking about or interested, not asking about, interested. When it comes to Kashyyyk, we've talked about the slave trade and we can probably touch on that in a second, but the mining is interesting for me because have they yet actually said what the minerals are? Is it just like, because we know in other planets and stuff, they've done it for kyber crystals because it was kyber rich and that's why they've kind of mined there. And I know there was one other one where it was the minerals. They were mining something in one of the other shows for the minerals for the Death Star. So I'm wondering if that's connected. Is it like the special metal that is the generator for the Death Star is on Kashyyyk, and that's why they're strip mining Kashyyyk. I'm hoping we get to that because one of the only major planets that has been strip mined to the point of where it is Kashyyyk. And it would just be cool to know what those minerals are. But again, this is the nerdy lore bit in me going, I'm just curious now. I'm like, what? Or is it just like, hey, we're already going to take all the people, so let's just take, like what happened in Africa. We're already taking the people, so let's just mine the diamonds and everything else out of the oil and the coal out of the ground while we're here.
Well, that's it. I think that's the parallel, isn't it? And I mean, it's even that, you know, they're burning down villages. It's not even the bigger cities or encampments on Kashyyyk. These are villages, and it's like systematic, sort of destruction of the villages, enslavement of the Wookiees. I guess because they're strong. So maybe, you know, in terms of that, for working within these Empire facilities, moving really heavy stuff. And also, you know, it's not just that, it's that cultural. I mean, we have that reference from the Trandoshan general who says, you know, we found more of these standing stones and just burn them effectively, you know, wipe it out. It is effectively like cleaning this planet of its inhabitants as much as its wealth, whatever that may be.
And the standing stones would be kind of a religious artifact of the Wookiees. So if you're clearing the standing stones, you're effectively trying to wipe them out completely from the planet. I did look it up while you guys were speaking, what it is that they were providing. So on the planet of Kashyyyk, they were taking the wood. So they were using the enslaved Wookiees to cut down the trees of this forest planet so that they could give lumber to the Empire. They were also farming on the planet so they could create supplies for the Imperial forces as well. And finally, they were taking Rorschite. I know. I was trying to work out how to pronounce that. Which is what's used in the Imperial beams. So it's what's used for their weapons, effectively. Okay. So that's kind of a crystal that they take from the planet as well to create their beam weapons.
That's cool. I like, again, so that's been discussed, but that's been discussed in a very kind of rare offshoot of something where it's been discussed. So I'm like, this is, again, what I like about the batch. We're just seeing, for a kid, or for the younger audience, this is just a fun story
Yeah.
about Gungi and his home. For those of us who are a bit older, you can literally make direct parallels back to colonial England and the colonization of different countries in the world, and the British Empire and the Dark Empire. Well, the other Dark Empire.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we can start, like, you can make adult parallels between what the writers are trying to talk about
Yeah.
when they say, let's burn the Sanding Stones and the mercenaries and things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think Kashyyyk itself stays under Imperial control up until a couple of years before a Star Wars A New Hope. So I think they're under Imperial control for about 20 years as their planet gets taken apart. So, as far as I remember, it's eventually, and this might not be canon anymore, but as far as I remember, Han Solo and Chewbacca get involved in the liberation of Kashyyyk a couple of years before A New Hope. So
I think that's gone now.
that's probably not canon
that was
anymore.
one of the cool legends from the comics or the book. The Solo books. But I believe, here's a bit of nugget. There is talk of a Solo too. And apparently that was part of, like, that was one of the scripts because they were going to pull it's a trilogy, isn't it? Those books?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the Solo books. And I think that they were going to pull all that into a kind of get him right up to the Tatooine, kind of bar. In Solo too.
Right.
But, we know how Solo 1 went, so.
I think it makes sense because obviously the liberation of the Wookiees in Solo, when Chewbacca comes and frees his people who are enslaved, I think it would make sense that would be the next place that Solo would go on to with Chewbacca.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Should we move on to blaster point number 3, which is the wrapping up of the rest of the story and how we get to the end of the episode, essentially.
Yeah, so let us get on to Blaster Point 3. I kind of really liked on this the demise of General Venomar, the Trandoshan general here, who is, burning down these villages. They're tracking to find the Jedi. They realize, along with the Imperials, that there are Jedi scars on the tanks that they've attacked to protect the Jedi. And so I kind of like the plan here when Hunter offers to help protect the village and Gungi for the head of this village, Yenny. I guess this is the little snippet, that the trees are part of their spiritual world and that they have a plan, and it involves these kind of spider-like creatures. So I like how General Venomar gets sort of captured by these spiders. It's kind of, it's actually pretty dark in that sense. You can imagine him being sort of bound up and fed to the young spider type creatures as well. But
there's a little Lord of the Rings there, the way you've explained it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, a bit Shelob-y. But also you see Gungi there sort of putting down his lightsaber because these creatures only attack when feel threatened. Otherwise, I guess it's like sort of with dogs, you just don't make eye contact.
Is that not bears?
Or bears or elephants, I guess. Well, any animal that potentially attacks you, you don't look at them in the eye.
Yeah.
Our cat.
Charlie the podcat, don't look her in the eye.
No, exactly. Or he leaps on you, tries to rip your throat out.
He doesn't. He doesn't do that.
He doesn't.
He tries to lick your face. That's all.
Which is worse when you smelt his breath.
That's true.
Yeah, for me, this was a fitting kind of end, if you want to call it that. And it's that you're giving Gungi his just desserts, you're giving the general his just desserts and giving Gungi his kind of his moment to shine in for those who are new to him. You're kind of seeing him in his bit more glory. You're seeing the batch do what they do best.
Yeah.
And bringing it all together in kind of attempting to kind of be the good guys. They're falling more and more into somewhat of the good guy role when in theory the Bad Batch are essentially just smugglers and not bad guys, morally grey guys just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And it's turning into that kind of, like, they will at some point theoretically fall into the rebels and work with the rebels to try and save against the Empire.
Exactly. Like, you know, they started out obviously as an elite force of the clone forces, so the top of the evil guys in the universe, effectively. So these stories should hopefully all add up to their knowledge and their want to help other places in the galaxy. You know, seeing a place like Kashyyyk, which is a beautiful place, like it's a beautiful planet that we've seen in different ways, but seeing it being stripped of all of its resources, you know, the mention here that you made, John, of the trees themselves being almost sentient and part of the society, having the Wookiees have to cut those down for firewood. Like, that's quite a big, it's a horrible thing to put these creatures through, I suppose. They're sacrificing something that's really important to them to support an empire. So having our Bad Batch here, seeing what the Empire are actually doing across planets, will hopefully kind of bring us back to that conversation we saw between Hunter and Echo, where Echo was trying to convince Hunter that they need to do something more for the people in the galaxy. Yes, they saved Omega from Kamino, but there's other people that need saving. And now them seeing these types of experiences across the galaxy being caused by the Empire will hopefully lead the Bad Batch to be leaders of the rebellion or support the rebellion in some way and help the people who are being trodden on by the Empire as they start ruining the rest of the galaxy.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, ultimately, you know, Gungi has his new home. He's adopted by this village into their society, which is a nice end for Gungi. Although it does make me wonder what kind of hellscape his other Padawan Jedis are in.
Mm-hmm.
For me, on Gungi, and I'll kind of round out my kind of final point on this. This leads me to, and I kind of discussed it with you guys before we recorded, my wider my wider kind of like, that is starting to unfold with the universe that is the Star Wars universe, which is, you do now have another Jedi who, at the time before A New Hope, is now back in hiding. Not kind of hiding. So, like, we're getting more and more big Jedi, or powerful Jedi. You've got Cal Kestis from the video games. Mm-hmm. You've got now Gungi, you've got Ahsoka, you've got all of these guys before or after the kind of the original trilogy. So A New Hope to Empire and Jedi, they are floating around. So you're getting more and more and more Jedi. So I'm just wondering, I want more. I do want a new Jedi show then. Give me something a bit more with this, because now we know that there are many Jedi who survived. There's not just like a few here or there. Like, we're getting up into like more than a handful.
We're
Jedi
probably talking about 20 or 30 named Jedi, I'd say, at this stage that are probably alive and in hiding. But, you know, I know nobody wants to talk about Attack of the Clones. Most people forget about Attack of the Clones, but the one thing that movie did show was how many Jedi were there, and that was only a one battle that we saw where we had all the Jedi completely come in and overrun this arena. Hundreds were there. When the clone forces turned, that was effectively, if you were near the clone forces, you would be killed by them. So there's obviously other Jedi out in the galaxy, and ones that weren't discovered, which will be coming, which will become force sensitive over the years, ones that weren't in training during that time. So I like that story is out there now, and we know there were expanded universe stories that became legends, as they say, which means not canon. But I like that they're kind of setting this stuff up so that we could have a potential Jedi show in the future. We could have that potential, that idea of creating a new central Jedi Order in the future where all of these people come to train. We've seen that with Grogu in Mandalorian. So there hopefully will be a story where they will take some of these Jedis that we're seeing and when they come out of hiding, what happens to them will be the story that can be told in the future. But it's, I do think it's being set up intentionally, in a way, in this universe to properly have the ability to tell these stories, because one of the things that's been the criticism of Star Wars in the past is that they keep going back to the Skywalker storyline over and over again. So I do think when you see these things in the background aren't there for no reason. I think they're there because it gives them opportunities to do things in the future. They want Star Wars to last till long after we're gone. So a way to do that is set up these ideas that people can possibly take and turn into stories in the future.
Yeah. And I think that for me is just, I'm kind of getting closer and closer to just give me that now. Like, give me one of those stories.
Right.
Give me, we do know there is the Jude Law kind of one coming up, and I'm hoping maybe that's like 5 younglings and Jude Law's and a Jedi in hiding, kind of thing, where he takes them on there, kind of on a training kind of piece.
Skeleton crew, isn't it?
That's it, yeah, skeleton crew. I'm hoping that's somewhat there, but again, we don't know. We know we have Ahsoka coming up, which is going to be amazing. But I'm like, cool. We now know there's 20 to 30 Jedis just hiding. Doesn't even need to be those 20 or 30. You can just give me, hey, we over the course of a series, you bring together 20, or you bring together 5 Force-sensitive people who have to learn it by themselves, and you get an introduction to a brand new order, but they don't know what they're doing, and they're working their way through. Yeah. I think it's just that as this show and the many others talk about the Jedi and hint and touch or show lightsaber battles, which is, for me, one of the coolest elements of Star Wars. Yeah. I just want more. And I think just having Gungi just now there, like, going off and being adopted by one of these tribes, I'm just like, cool, where was he for the rest of the known history?
In hiding, Chris, in hiding. It does tend to make Yoda seem really callous. He sent out this warning message when Order 66 was released, and when they realized that they were about to fall as a Jedi Order, to say, go into hiding, everybody. Then he went off to Dagobah and just sat there for years and years on end until Luke Skywalker went and sought him out. So he was still in hiding. He was still unwilling to go out into the world and find the galaxy and find all the rest of the Jedis in hiding. At least not in stories that have been told yet. But I would love that idea if we had someone like Ahsoka, possibly, who was not in the Order. That's why she survived, but she was no longer in the Jedi Order. So potentially her going out and trying to find other Force-sensitive people and bringing them into protection in some way. Maybe that's the story that we'll see in Ahsoka in the future. But only time will tell on that one.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, that was my rant. Let's go back to your regular scheduled programming of the end of The Bad Batch.
So yes, overall, what did you think of this episode of The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 6, Tribe? John?
I liked it, I really did. It was great to have Gungi back in the frame. I think, I would have liked a bit more connectivity to Clone Wars, because if you didn't know, he is there, and he, number of episodes in that. But I'd give this 4 firefighters out of 5.
And it did lead to you watching 11 episodes of the Clone Wars back to back to back.
I think that was it, I just liked the whole vein of it, and seeing the Bad Batch and the Wookiees, given their mutual distrust that would have been there initially, soften Omega as that kind of midpoint to be able to bring them together, and just that changing view of the Bad Batch. I'm liking that arc within the show so much, even though I think it could be done with being pulled a bit closer, a bit more tightly. And maybe that's what will happen in the next 2 episodes, given that they're a double bill. I think, real possibility there, because, we do know there is the Emperor in this season. So, they're going to be going deep into the heart of Imperial territory, I'm guessing, maybe, with this. So, I think enjoyed this episode. So 4 firefighters out of 5 for me.
Excellent. How about yourself, Chris?
Good to see an unknown Jedi to me for the first time. No, sorry, I was riffing on John. The fun part here for me was just the additional lore of Kashyyyk, of the Wookiees, and kind of some of the chain codes and everything we've discussed already, notwithstanding on the Jedi stuff that we ended that conversation with. For me, the only aspect that I am now is we're 3 for 3. 3 connected universe stories that kind of move the story along. 3 or kind of fun of the week kind of elements where we can dive for a bit more. I am very hopeful that next week we are getting a double hitter where that should give us, the assumption being that because it's a double hitter, we are going to get more story on season 2. And it will be a bit more connected, and that will move the story a bit more forward. And that's kind of where I am. I'm like, cool. I've now had my fun fill. Give me some a bit more meaty.
Yeah.
And yeah, but overall, just a nice romp. It gave me lightsabers. It gave me whoosh whoosh, pow pow, pew pew, and some additional lore. So yeah, overall good episode. What about yourself, Derek?
I probably judge this episode in 2 ways. As an episode itself, wasn't entirely successful for me, but it's a fun episode. It's good to see, a character like Gungi, a Wookiee with a lightsaber, being saved by the Bad Batch, them, giving up their mission to bring him back home. And when they get home, they find out the planet's is under attack effectively, and they have to work with Gungi. That's a good storyline for the episode, but I think where it fails, the other kind of judgment I'd have on the episode is that it doesn't connect this very well to all of the other things that have come in the past. It is a totally standalone episode, and I don't think it needs much. I think it's just a line here or there to explain how sad it is to see Gungi on his own, trapped, and the rest of the younglings that the last time we saw him with are all gone. I think having a moment with that character to realize how much he's been, ill-treated, effectively. He's been kidnapped. He's been taken away from all the rest of the people that he lived his life with. If you scratch under the surface, as we've done in the podcast here, there's loads of interesting things it's touching on. But will people scratch under the surface of the episode, or will they just watch the episode and miss out on the connections that we've been able to see here? As I say, that there's a moment there with Gungi where he's, distrustful of the Bad Batch because of what's happened to him in the past. But that's not the only sad experience he's gone through in the last couple of months or last year or two. And he's about to go back to a planet that he's never been to. In his mind, he's never been to it before. He was born there and taken away by the Jedi. So, those are all really interesting things that are going on, but way too far under the surface to pick up on unless you're actually sitting down and talking about them. So as an episode itself, it was okay, but I like what was underneath, and I wish they connected the two, kind of as you said, John, as well. But let's hope that there'll be a really good episode coming up in the future of the series. These are fun adventure episodes, but I'd like to get a bit deeper and a bit more connected as the series goes on.
Excellent stuff.
Thank you so much, fellow Batchers, for joining us once again for our 6th episode of The Bad Batch Season 2 Tribe. We will be back with you next week with the double episode 7, The Clone Conspiracy, and episode 8, Truth and Consequences, which are both released on Disney Plus on February 8th.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you subscribe, because we are also covering The Last of Us on HBO right now, a very different show with lots of different stuff going on in the Clone Wars. But I guess the galaxy could have ended off like Earth did in The Last of Us, being completely empty of people trying to survive, right?
Exactly.
Well, yes.
I'm trying to make a connection, guys.
No, I don't think there is. Really.
Probably very different audiences.
Other than the Mandalorian is the lead.
It's the lead character.
One of the lead characters in The Last of Us.
That's very true. That's very true.
So maybe Grogu will pop up and save them from some clickers.
Maybe. I don't expect it, but
well, no. So the fungi infection in The Last of Us is actually the midichlorians.
Oh,
it evolves in the future and becomes midichlorians, and that's how you get Jedi. There you go.
Wow. Okay. We've all stretched very far there for some kind of connection. I think John got closest with at least the actor being
Pedro
in Star
Pascal.
Wars.
Yes.
That's about it. But thanks so much for joining us. Hope you're going to join us for that podcast as well.
Yes, thank you so much. And if you've enjoyed what you've heard, don't forget you can support us over on Patreon by heading on to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where you can support us for any ongoing monthly amount, and it helps keep the lights on, the hamsters running, and Derek involved in caffeine. But if you want to buy him a coffee and keep him caffeine fueled, you can head on over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, where you can support us with a one-off payment and a one-off coffee, and it is very much appreciated. But don't also forget, you can just support us by sharing the podcast, writing a review and all that, because if you share the podcast, you're what, gentlemen?
Sharing the love.
I missed my cue there.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us, fellow Batchers. Until next week, keep watching, keep listening, and keep being bad.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.